Hi, this is Ginny, and this is the podcast Bisaya in America. So today I'm going to be talking about the strangest people I've encountered in America. And I was just today, so I was supposed to go to the Asian market, like it's an Asian night market, but I swear, I kid you not, I think instead of like just expecting dozens of people, hundreds of people flock to the place, and it's just like a parking lot essentially, and it's like the lines were so long that it was just snaking, just I don't know, it was pretty bad. So I usually I'm very good at, I'm very patient person. I'm a very patient person. I would line up, but I was concerned because I was with my neighbor, Connie, and she's she's not used to the heat, and so I was thinking about her, and I didn't want her to be uncomfortable. So we left because it was like it would literally have been a 30-40 minute wait just to get takoyakis. And I don't know, takoyakis are supposed to be fast food, and I don't think there's anything fast about it's a Japanese street food too. I don't think there's anything fast if the lines just snake around the parking lot. And there were literally, I don't know, maybe more than 50 people in front of me. I don't know, it's like a really long line, and it was confusing. But anyway, so we decided to go to a Japanese restaurant instead, and I just typed in Google. I was lazy. I said, there's this one, it's the first one that pops up. It's like 2 miles from where we were located, and he said, and I said, like, let's go there, And luckily, Connie, she had no fuss about it. And so we went to the Japanese resto, and it's just a regular Japanese restaurant in America, run by, I would like to think that they're Japanese. They seemed like they spoke Japanese. At least the sushi guy spoke Japanese. I could recognize a few words and stuff because I have Japanese friends. I just recognized some few words and the accent as well. So I know it was Japanese. Anyway, so I was sitting with my back turned against the entrance, but I could hear people coming in from behind me, and I noticed that there was a guy that sat behind me because like the waiter, I could hear that he sat behind me, and the waiter asked, like, is this table for one? And he said, yeah, just one. And then it was funny because like when I went to the bathroom and I came back, I was shocked. Like the guy had a plastic bag over his head, and he had like a face shield that ran from his head only to his nose, and he had a mask that was only covering his nose, and he put tissues around. He put a tissue around the face mask, like the side of the face shield. So it was pretty weird, and I was like, I tried not to laugh, but he was hilarious. Like literally, you see those memes on the internet where those people are wearing like plastic bottles over their head, giant plastic bottles over their head, or a ski mask or something like that. And that was in 2020, but it's 2021, dude. I think you're behind the times. It's just really funny. So his mask only covered his nose, and his mouth was exposed, and he put tissues on the side of his face and stuff. It was just funny, and I'm pretty sure that COVID is airborne, and I'm pretty sure that it passes through the tissue, and with his mouth exposed, he's gonna inhale airborne particles as well. I was just hilarious. And I wish that Connie, because she was facing the guy, but I didn't really notice. She didn't say anything until we left. I wish she told me because I had my camera with me and I would have taken a picture of this dude. Really, but I was just so I was so shocked. I was like, oh my God, what is that? At first, it didn't register that he was wearing a plastic bag over his head. It didn't really register. I was like, oh, that's so weird. What's he doing? And then when I walked closer to my table, back to my table, I could see him. And it was just funny. He was just so funny. And oh my God. Unfortunately, he's Asian though, because I could hear when he said table for one, like I could hear his accent, and he looked maybe Japanese or who knows, like another East Asian, I'm sure, but I'm pretty sure he's Japanese. But that's so sad, you know. Yeah, speaking of which, because this episode is going to be about the strangest people that I've encountered in America. So, a couple years back when I was living in Jersey, I was part of a huge hiking group. It's like Asians again. So, they were pretty nice. I loved them. In fact, like I still keep in touch with some of them, and we're friends on Facebook. We get updated on each other. What's happening and stuff. I still comment from time to time, like almost maybe every week or so, because they're really nice. The group is nice. The organizers are nice. But this one time so I was I was regular with the group. I would join maybe when, during the summertime, I would join a lot of activities, sometimes even weekly, for the hikes. And this time we had a long trip. I think it was in northern part of New York. I forgot where it was actually, but it was 5 hours away from New York. And so they made arrangements, and I think I had a roommate assigned to me because, it's girls with girls and boys with boys, because it's an Asian group and we're very conservative. And like who wants to have a roommate with a guy? If you're a girl, it would be pretty tricky. So I was randomly assigned to this Asian woman. I think she was Korean American. I think she was born in America, but I think her parents were Korean. Anyway, I don't think that's relevant. But so what happened? So she was nice at first, and I got to know her, and she's like, oh, yeah, she's nice. And the following morning, because we were roommates, so she was assigned to me because if I remember, she was actually my passenger. So we rode together for 5 hours, and because I was the only one with a car. I think she was from Queens and she didn't own a car like a lot of New Yorkers in that part of the city do. Because I lived in Jersey, so I have a car, but usually people in Queens or parts of the city, New York City, a lot of them, they don't have cars because our public transportation is pretty reliable, and I would really not want to have a car too if I lived in those parts. Anyway, so she rode with me and she was nice. But then another guy was assigned to ride with me in a carpool, and I think my mission was to not miss the boat or the ferry ride, because I think we were going to an island. I think if I remember, I think it was Thousand Islands in upstate New York. So it's Thousand Islands, and my mission was not to miss the ferry. But I think we were like not really dilly-dallying, but I was pretty obsessed with not having a record of speeding, so I didn't speed. And then they just left me, and they left us. And luckily there was like 3 of us, so there was a guy, and he's nice. He's my friend, and then my roommate and me. And then, but we missed the ferry by maybe like 2 minutes, and it was bad. And we were like saying, oh, we're just going to get the other one. It's going to come again in 30 minutes. But this woman, and I forgot her name, she had a a tantrum like I, she's an adult. I think she was in her 30s. And I was like, you would not believe it. She had a temper tantrum with, dragging her feet. And she was so upset with me that she didn't even speak to me. And even the guy that, my friend, the other passenger, we were just shaking our heads because she ignored us. And she was like, yeah, 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 yeah. So she had a temper tantrum, didn't speak to us because we missed the ferry. And there was another ferry, we were just going to be delayed, but we're not going to get left behind. We have our own car. And, but anyway, so what happened was, I think because, I think it eventually, 30 minutes turned into an hour or something. I don't know. But me and the other guy, we were just, happy that we got left behind because there were other things that we could do, and we actually explored the town and we had, you know, uh, we really enjoyed it, but she was not having none of those. She didn't want to have anything to do with me. And it was just funny. But I was glad, though, that I had another passenger with me who was cool with being left behind, because we eventually caught up and it was cool. But she was so mad at me that when we came back to the hotel, she was just slamming doors. And she's like, oh, you're still there. And I'm like, it was so funny, and I had to report her to the organizer, the main organizer, because she was so mean. And then I think she didn't want to pay me or something. I didn't really mind if she didn't pay me. It was just for the gas, Anyway, I would have gone with or without a passenger. It was good that, someone was sharing the gas with me, but she would literally not pay me. And I was like, I was okay with it, but the organizer made her pay. And so she threw the money in front of me, she just threw it. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty disrespectful. But at that time, I was just laughing it off. She was freaking hilarious with her temper tantrums at the age of 30. I'm like, what? Is she in middle school or is she, a high schooler even? I don't think high schoolers would act that way. Maybe when you're 12 years old or 13 years old, maybe that's when you still have the tantrums, but not when you're an adult. So it was really pretty funny. And that was strangest encounter, one of the strangest encounter. Another strange encounter with a person was this random guy. And I used to work in the Lower East Side. I did home health. Home health is like house call, so you go into people's apartments. But I was assigned in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, which is downtown. And this guy, I kid you not, I guess because he saw I was Asian. This was a few years ago before the Asian hate thing, Anyway, he jumps out from nowhere. He jumps up and he comes out from nowhere and then stands in front of me and then does the karate chop move and then makes like a Bruce Lee sounds like hiya or something like that. It was so funny. And he stared at me and I stared at him back. And then I'm like, okay, I don't want to be late for my appointment and I just walked past him. It was so funny, but it was so freaking hilarious. I don't know if he was right in the head or anything, but the fact that I just walked past him and ignored him, that's very New Yorker of me, But it was freaking hilarious that this guy from out of nowhere pretending to be Bruce Lee, because I don't know if he did that on purpose or just, I don't know. He was on drugs. He saw I was Asian. He thought I was Chinese. I don't know. And this is another funny thing too in New York. I think I was heading back to Midtown, and so it was at the end of my work shift. So I headed back to downtown and I was waiting for a bus. And I think I saw this guy who was in a wheelchair, and then he had no legs. This guy, I noticed though that he was holding something that looked like a bottle, I don't know, a wine bottle, whatever. It was covered in something, but I know it was a bottle of something, and I think he was drinking from it. Anyway, so he saw me and like we made eye contact, and he said, like, help me, take me to that restaurant over there. And I'm like, oh, okay. It was just a few feet, maybe 10, 15 feet. So I pushed him to what looked like a Chinese restaurant. And then I tried to open the door and stuff. And the people inside, I think it was the cashier and whoever, the waiter, they saw me that I was holding this guy with no legs, trying to get in the Chinese restaurant. And I think because he was drunk or something, they got scared. And then they said, no, 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 don't let him, like they gestured, like, don't let him in here. And I was like, and then I tried to open the door and they said, no, 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 don't do that. So I was confused. I'm like, what the hell? What am I going to do? So I just left the guy in front of the restaurant because like, I'm like, I don't know what to do. I mean, yeah, maybe they're right. Maybe this guy is, a drunk or something. He probably was, but I just left him there. He was most probably homeless, but, he asked for my help, but what can I do? I can't take him inside. They didn't want me, the owner or whoever was inside didn't want him to be inside. So I just left him. I just walked. I'm like, okay, I'm done. My task is done because he told me to take me to the restaurant. He didn't tell me exactly to take me in there or something, but it was really funny. And the expression on their faces, man, like the people inside, they were just aghast. They were like, no, don't take him in here. And it was so funny. And me just walking away. It was so funny. In another New York, a lot of this involves New York because like I walked a lot in New York and I saw pretty strange stuff over there. But this is just the things that stand out. So this guy, so I walked into, so I was in the subway and then I walked into this empty cart, an empty subway car, or at least I thought it was an empty subway car. And the moment I stepped in, I smelled the most horrible stench, and it came from this homeless guy, and it was so bad. But being from a third world country, I was like, okay, yeah, I have a strong stomach. I could, and my nose is kind of numb, because I worked at one point in a government hospital in the Philippines, and it's pretty bad, not to put the Philippines down, but there's because a lot of the people can't afford like good health care. So they're in the government hospitals, and there's just too many of them. And unfortunately, it does stink because sometimes people with diabetic or gangrenous foot or feet are there, and they have infections, and you cannot imagine. But I'm used to that. But this one was different. It was something I've never smelled before. It wasn't decaying flesh. It was pee that had dried out, and it was just with the air conditioning and stuff like that, it was magnified. The smell was magnified. It was horrible. And I noticed, so I was like, it was pretty awkward because I'm like, oh no. And he asked for money, and I think I gave him $5. And when I turned to my left side, I saw, I kid you not, maybe over a dozen New Yorkers scrunched to the other side. Like they literally were like on the other side. They were crowded like they were like shoulder to shoulder on the other side of the subway car, and they looked shocked, like they were like, oh my god, because the smell was so bad. And unfortunately we couldn't get off because the subway car had already like gone, like we were like going to our destination and stuff. We were so we couldn't stop anymore. And then I just remember the look on their faces. They were so shocked. Like, they were like, oh my God, please. Like, they were turning green basically because of the stench. So I think this like homeless guy just stepped in and stuff maybe before I came in. And now those people were trapped. And so it was pretty awkward because I was like, oh, okay. So I walked over to them. And then I joined them on the other side, and they were right. The smell there was less at the other side of the subway car. It was not as bad, but we eventually everybody left. After the next stop, everybody just left the subway car because it was really bad, and I really felt bad for the homeless guy because obviously he was mentally ill, and he needed help. But it was just the expression of the people's faces. They were like, it was funny because they were all scrunched in one side of the subway car, and they were just shocked, and it's like just looking at their expressions, the expressions on their faces. It was so funny. Yeah. And another subway experience was, and you know how New Yorkers are, they're just gonna, ignore stuff. And so this guy, so I was walking to the subway car, but I had to stop because there was this guy, he was blocking the door. And so the engineer, or I think that's the engineer. I think they call them train engineers or whatever. So he tried to close the door on him because he would not leave. Like, he literally would not leave. And he was like, shouting like, hey, hey, something like that. And his pants fell down. And I could see his butt. His butt was exposed, but I was so lucky because the people in front of him saw his the other side, and probably saw his balls and stuff. And it was just like the engineer kept closing the door on him, and he would just not leave, and with his butt exposed. And I was like, oh, okay, this is just another day in crazy New York. Seeing a guy with his pants down and refusing to get off the exit, or to get off the subway car, and just delaying everybody. And it was just so typically New York. And then people they stopped and they stared for a bit, and then they went on their way. But I was so lucky I was behind him and not in front of him. And yeah, so I think what I did, I think once he got out of the doors and stuff, I think I went into the subway car. So it was funny. Yeah, there's a lot of characters here. And so another one that stands out, she's a darling. I really love her, but she's one of our patients in one of the buildings that I worked in, somewhere in East Texas. She was really nice, and she would say, good morning, sweetie. She was so polite. But the thing about her, I think she was schizophrenic or something. But one time the PT assistant came looking for her, and she told us, like, when she came back, she said, oh my God, I was so shocked and surprised because, like, she saw this patient. She was looking for the patient, so she opened the bathroom, and the bathroom was dark. So she turned on the light, so the PTA turned on the light, and the patient was just standing there in the dark, in the bathroom, and she was just staring into space, and she was so shocked. Like the PT assistant was so shocked, she just jumped up and she came back to us and told us that it was pretty bizarre finding the patient inside the bathroom with the doors, with the lights off and lights turned off, you know. I don't know, it's pretty hilarious. But when I would see her, though, she didn't enter the bathroom. I think she was just by the side of the door. Always, every time I walked past her room, she was always by the side of her door and just stuck there for some reason. But every time like she saw me, she would like, "Hey, how you doing, sweetie pie," and stuff like that. So it's just pretty hilarious. We do have a we do have a lot of, unfortunately, patients that are so hilarious. They're just so funny. Oh. Oh, okay. And another crazy thing, and I hate it. I think I have a pet peeve because back in the Philippines, it's pretty disrespectful if you put your foot up a table or something, or if you put it your foot on the dashboard of a vehicle or something. But anyway, so this guy was driving with his window rolled down, and I saw his foot sticking out. And I'm like, what? His foot is sticking out and he's driving. And I'm like, what the hell? I don't know. It's pretty hilarious. I don't know. It's a lot of strange people in America for sure. But that makes it interesting, you know, because if there were no strange people, it just would be a boring place. That is what makes America. Really, that's what makes America really interesting, because it's full of strange and weird people. And I guess that's in the Philippines too, but not as much, because I think Asian culture, we want to conform in a way. I think I remember the only strangest thing that I saw in the Philippines was walking in the, no, not walking. I was driving through this neighborhood and I saw, I don't know if it was a grown woman or a grown man, but in pajamas, walking on the streets and then carrying a giant teddy bear. And that was like several years ago. And that was just the most bizarre thing that I saw in the Philippines. But in America, it's pretty strange. I think if I recall, when I was in the airport, I saw this guy doing handstands in the airport. I'm like, oh, okay, that's pretty strange. So he was literally upside down, and that's just America for you, I guess. It's just pretty wacky place. Anyway, if you agree with me, email me at homewithgenie@gmail.com, HOMEOFGENIE@gmail.com. And I'm also, if you're interested in romantic comedies, do check out my website, www.homeofgenie@gmail.com. It's my website, and it has a link to my books and my other works. I'll be starting another YouTube channel soon, but it's mostly a blog featuring my dog Bacon and my dog Sky, and we're going to be traveling and eating and just doing stuff, you know. Hopefully it's entertaining enough. And I have a personal channel, but it's just mostly as a feed for my blogs, or my vlog, I mean, and it's a personal site, and you can also check that out. I'll provide a link below. I think everything is in my website, I think. Anyway, thanks for listening, and do email me if you have an interesting strange encounter with strange people in America. And have a good day. Thank you.